Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Super excited today. We've got Aunt Kaschula. Aunt is the founder of Private Guided Safaris. And right before I pushed the record button, we were having a whole conversation about the name of the business. And I said, stop, let me hit the record button. We'll continue this. So Aunt, you were explaining to me why you decided to go with Private Guided Safaris instead of Aunt's Safaris or something like that. So tell me more about that.
Thank you, Jason, and really great to be here. Really looking forward to our catch up. And so basically what ended up happening was when I started my guide apprenticeship, I was doing it under an incredibly dynamic and a real mover and a shaker of an individual, and a guy whose business was called after his own name. And when I then looked at as he was growing the business and a number of other guides were doing the same, I realized that all of them were named after their name. And I kind of thought, well, 20, 30 years on, when I want to kind of grow my business and get a bunch of other private guides in helping me and guide some of my guests and their families and referrals and all that lot, if my business was called Aunt Kaschula Safaris and someone is now booked onto that trip and Aunt Kaschula didn't rock up, there could be a bit of a problem. So I just thought, well, let me just do that. And then ultimately what we're looking at is providing a service, providing a very high level of service rather than an individual. And so that's how it was.
I think that's smart. I think you looked into the future. It's also really hard to sell a business when it's named after yourself. You know, when you get to that point, you want to retire. It makes it really hard to kind of sell a business because some guy named Bob Smith probably isn't going to want to buy Aunt Kaschula Safaris. That's going to be that's a tough one. So
there's some artistic thing is, 25 years later, I still haven't yet actually just kind of taken the leap and got a whole bunch of guides guiding for me. There are a few guys here and there, but ultimately it's still mostly me and my wife. It's a small family-run business, but it's worked and it's working, so we're still here.
Yeah, very cool. I was just on your website here a little bit before we got started, and it's great. You've got beautiful photos But yeah, you're definitely mixed in there. Your name's mixed in there a few times, a few pictures of you, but my feedback looking at the website, if I reached out to you to book a trip and you said, I'm going to have you with so-and-so up in such and such place, I wouldn't feel like I was, had the bait and switch or anything like that. So I think you've done a pretty good job with your messaging. So.
Well, thanks, Jason. I have to say, mentioning my website very quickly, that's also something that I'm quite guilty of, just having put very little effort into. I think the last time I updated must have been 5 to maybe 7 years ago, something crazy like that. And again, we just our business is all word of mouth. It's all referrals, and we're just so busy all the time. We just don't actually have the time to go and really put up a new kick-ass website, as we see just so many businesses as technology and things are growing and all that kind of stuff. I kind of pull my website up and like, wow, that was pretty cutting edge 5 years ago, but it needs like a paint.
As you know, it's my business is adventuretravelmarketing.com, Big World's Made Small Adventure Travel Marketing. So when you're ready, I'd be happy to jump in and help. And that being said, it looks great, number one. And number two, I think you can get away without making a lot of updates as long as you don't have date specific stuff on there, because there's a lot of your competitors out there that are advertising their Rwanda gorilla trek or whatever with the 2014 rates, and so at least you don't have rates and dates on there, so you can get away with it. You're doing good.
Yeah.
And we're gonna speak more about business. We're definitely gonna speak about Africa because I know it's your passion, and And I also want to know more about your story, because I think our listeners, they can research trips, they can research places pretty easy, but I feel like this space, it's really a lot about connections with people. So yeah, maybe they go to Africa to see the animals, but I know that it's the connection with the people that bring them back. And I've been a couple times. So I want to give our listeners an opportunity to kind of really connect with you through your voice here on the podcast. And I think they're curious. This is going to be basically the same conversation that you have with your guests when you're sitting there after a day in the field and you're having a scotch or dinner or whatever, and this question starts. And how did you get into this? What were you doing before this? Da 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 da. All these questions. So that's basically how the conversation we're going to have. So let's start with, how did you get from where you were to where you are now? And we can go back as far in history as you think is relevant.
Wow. Well, Jason, it's been quite a journey for me, but I have to say I've been incredibly, I don't know if the word is fortunate or blessed or lucky or whatever the case is, but from a very young age, I knew that the wild outdoors and the wild spaces of Africa is where I wanted to spend my life. And I was fortunate that my father had spent a lot of time in the bush when he was much younger. And then when we moved from Zimbabwe actually to Johannesburg, when I was a small boy, I was 2 years old, we moved to Johannesburg, a huge big city. My dad had been offered a very, very good position there in broadcasting some of the first native African TV channels and all of that, with his ability to speak local African languages very well and that side of things. And so anyhow, we would often come back to Zimbabwe on holidays into the bush and up to the Zambezi Valley and things like that. And it's interesting, it was the Free Night of Africa. When that came out, when Mum and Dad kind of saw that film, they kind of, I think, looked at one another and said, well, what are we doing in this huge big city, Johannesburg? Yes, it's been a good job for my father, but as a family, was it the best thing for the family? And they decided that going back home to Zimbabwe was something they really wanted to do. As children, we were absolutely delighted. And so we came back to Zimbabwe and were able to spend more time in these big wild open areas. And so for me, a very formative experience for me was, I must have probably been about 10 or 11 years old, but there was a safari camp that basically in the off season would take groups of children, would come for a week-long kind of adventure trip. And on the school notice board, I saw this little thing offering that there was this trip going, and there was talk of the Zambezi River and fishing and tracking and learning about birds and animals and all that side of things. And I went to my mum. I said, "Please, Mum, can I go in this?" And it was a fairly expensive trip at the time, or to a 10-year-old. So it did. Yeah, she spoke to my dad, and they gave the go ahead to do that. And a bunch of us kids were literally put in the back of a 3.5-ton lorry with wooden benches on the sides, no seatbelts, no health and safety, all of that lot. And literally with our backpacks thrown in, and up we went. And it was a week that I had the most unbelievable time there. There were professional guides at the time. I didn't know what a professional guide was, but there were a number of professional guides, and there was actually an individual, a guy called Troy Williamson, who was this, to a little child at that age, was just this huge, big, burly guy with these long, golden, kind of long hair and just muscled up and wearing his khaki kind of clothes and all that lot. And it appeared that he knew every single bird call, animal sound, track, the whole lot. And that week that I spent out in the bush, I remember learning my first bird was a lilac-breasted roner. My first tree was a whitethorn torchwood. I got to I was just absolutely like a pig in muck over the course of this week. And I came away from that trip having been really transformed to the fact that actually there were safari camps out there. I came from a family where we didn't have the kind of disposable income to go and stay in these nice tented camps and lodges and hotels and things like that. We would go out kind of camping and just go in a 2-wheel drive pickup, because of my dad's interest in the bush. Wasn't something that my mum was so keen on. But anyhow, that trip, I just came away from it, and it just kind of set me on course for what I've ultimately done for the rest of my career. And then I went to
come back. I was going to ask you, did you come back from that trip like already knowing I want to be like, I think the guy's name was Troy? I want to be like Troy. I want to be a safari. I want to be a bush guide. Did you already know that?
Yes, straight away. 10 years old, I came back from that trip. I said, that's who I want to be like. That man and that dude, he was like God. He was just unbelievable. I was just so sad that he was very tragically killed in a car accident of all crazy things. Quite a few years later, but this guy was just fearless. He would spearfish in the Zambezi River. You look at the life that someone like that led. But anyhow, Troy, if I look at it, he was the person who ultimately had a very big influence in terms of what I've done with my life today and that trip, and just his passion, his enthusiasm, his knowledge, his all of that just rubbed off. And
well, quite a legacy. A legacy. You speak of him passing and who he was, but boy, he really left a legacy. I'm sitting here looking at his legacy, and as you're talking about him, it's a reminder of how much influence we can have on people. I'm sure there's many other people that Troy spent time with as well, and realistically, I'm sure there's many people that you spend time with as well that you're having the same influence. Have you run into have you had opportunities to engage with younger, with children and inspire them? Do you know anybody that you've spent time in the bush with? I'm sure, right?
No, very much no, very much so. So yes, a number of youngsters, and seeing them come up through the ranks and eventually qualify and all that lot has been hugely rewarding. Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Yeah.
What did your parents think when you came home and said, I want to be like Troy, I want to be a bush guide? Did your family support that idea, or were they like, oh, I knew we shouldn't have sent him on that trip?
Yeah. Well, the interesting is I came back from that trip, and afterwards there was a whole slide presentation that parents were told what their kids did and this and that, the other. And there was actually a prize that was given for the child who, I don't know, contributed the most or learned the most or whatever it was. But I actually ended up getting that prize, which is a book, which had my name written in it and all that lot. So I suppose coming back from that trip, it wasn't like, well, we sent little Anthony on this trip and he had a good time and he's come back. He's like, wow, he really flourished and he absolutely loved it. And they'd always known that I had an interest in the bush, but coming back from that was certainly, I think my parents, and certainly my dad, he certainly was the one who I think instilled an interest and a real enthusiasm in the bush a lot. And so I look at my dad probably looking back and saying, hey, that was actually probably money pretty well spent, because the times that we have now since spent together in the bush over the years, this is now very long time since then. But it's somewhere we've really enjoyed family time together, and my children as well now. I look at our daughter Tassia, she's 13. She went on her first safari when she was 9 weeks old. So so all of our kids just they can't get enough of being on safari and being out in the wilds of Africa.
I'm curious because I definitely got the sense that the parents were supportive, but I'm just always fascinated by that moment when somebody says, okay, this is what I'm going to do, whether that's they drop out of school and buy a one-way ticket somewhere, or they decide at the age of 10. Do you remember, were there ever moments that your mom or your dad said, we always had hoped you'd be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. Are you sure you really want to do this? Did you ever have those moments, or was it just from the age of 10? It's like, okay, go get it.
From the age of 10, when I just said, this is what I want to do, I don't think any of my parents ever dissuaded me from that. And it goes further to the fact that I was at a boarding school. I was at day school for junior school, and a friend of mine at the time, his older brother was at a boarding school outside of town. And when I heard that this boarding school had its own game park, and it had, I think at the time when I was there, we had 62 different sports and activities to choose from. We had rifle club, we had archery, we had a snake club, we had a conservation club, and then we had everything in between. We had a falconry club, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but we just did it. And so when I heard about this, I'm like, I want to go to Peterhouse. That's a school that I want to go to. And so my mom at the time, I think she was quite horrified. She was like, well, what have I done wrong? Why do you want to go to boarding school? You want to leave home and go to boarding school? I'm like, well, look at what the school's got. Mom, I'm going to be living with my friends, and we had mountain biking club. There was nothing that school didn't have. And it was just, and I just absolutely thrived and just really loved that. And then again, my career later on was quite heavily influenced by going to that school and some of the people that I met there, and the school trips that we had. We had school trips all over the place, to Gonrajera National Park, which is again a national park where I've spent a huge amount of time, and it's kind of almost become the center of the universe for me and my family. That was all part of going on one of these school expeditions. We went to Matusaronda National Park. We went all over the place.
Were there other kids that you were going to school with that also became guides, or do you know?
So not in my year, but subsequently, a couple of years later, a number of them have. Yes, yeah. And there's actually one boy who was probably about 3 years above. He was about 3 years older than me. We went on one of these school trips, and he then later also ended up becoming a guide. Yeah.
Did you feel like you were unique in the sense that, I mean, when I hear of going to boarding school and kind of your mom's response to that, I get it. Because I remember when I was younger, boarding school was a threat, honestly, in my family. It's like, if you don't shape up, we're going to, ship you away to...
It's not for everyone.
It actually wasn't the boarding school that my mom would say. She'd said the boys' school, which is a little different than the boarding school. The state of Wyoming boys' school is for kids that were really in trouble and used to be a real threat. So I'm curious if there were other kids in the boarding school that were like, you're crazy. Why do you want to be here? I don't want to be here. My parents don't care. They don't love me. They shipped me off to boarding school. Or was your experience that like everybody there was happy? I mean, what was that like?
Yes, boarding school certainly not for everyone. But again, I think you can go to the most amazing school, or school that has an amazing reputation, or a school that isn't, and you can just get lucky or unlucky with all the other kids who just happen to be in that year. And I was very lucky. So I was very lucky that I had a great group of friends in my year. They had all come from farming backgrounds, and a lot of them also really enjoyed the bush and all that lot. So I made some very, very firm friends who even to this day are my closest friends are from that time. It's almost like it was a crucible that we're all put into, and we all went through some tough times. I was actually a year over age because I started school in South Africa, where they start a year older. When I actually got to Peterhouse, an all-boys boarding school, all of my sports activities had to be with the boys in the year above me, who would kind of look down on this younger chap. And I was actually at the point where if I didn't know a boy in the year above me's name, you'd call him sir. It was a very different world. So you just had to toe the line and just look after yourself and just get your head down, ears back. But I really enjoyed it. And we just had so many extracurricular activities to keep us busy that I just absolutely thrived and just loved it.
It's none of my business, and I don't know why I want to ask this. It's a little off topic, but all boys boarding school. It sounds like you had a lot of activities to keep yourselves entertained. Did you even miss the opportunity to engage with girls, or what?
Girls didn't come onto the radar for me, at least until I was about 16. I was quite a late developer, should we say. And I suppose mountain bikes and catching snakes and all those other things. But then, yeah, suddenly when girls came on the scene, it wasn't actually an all-boys. So there's a boys' campus and a girls' campus. And basically, in your final 2 years of school, the girls would actually come across to the boys' side and would have academic lessons together. So
which was about the age of 16. You were about
was actually
when that happened.
No, that would be 17 and 18. So your last 2 years of school. I was actually 19 because I was a year older. But anyhow, one could visit the girls' school if you wanted to and all that lot. But yeah, the first couple of years, should we say, my attentions were very firmly somewhere else.
Yeah, very cool. And I also want to ask, okay, so your daughter's 13. So your daughter comes to you here in the next few weeks and says, Mom, Dad, I want to go to boarding school. She's all excited about it the same way you were. How do you respond to that?
So how crazy is this? So my wife, Romana, is from Kenya. She went to boarding school in the year that you turn 6. So at the age of 5 and the year that you turn 6, she went to boarding school, and she was away from her mum for 3 weeks at a time. All of us, so we've got 3 children. Our eldest Tassia is 13, our middle son Hugo is 11, and then we've got a 4-year-old Dorian. But Tassia and Hugo both started boarding school at a little school about an hour and a half's drive from town, where we lived until very recently. And they were 5.5 when they started boarding school. And I was like, wow, it's only weekly.
So my question is way behind. I'm way behind the game here. You've already been through all this.
Yeah. So they've both fired. They've lived it. Tassia was made for boarding school. She took like a duck to water, and she's really thrived and done incredibly well there. And she's now at Peterhouse. She's now at the girls' school side. She's just started her first term there. She's been there for about 6 months now. Yeah.
And is she into snakes and stuff?
Sadly, there is no longer a snake club, but now that we've actually moved home we've just built ourselves a new house that's probably about a 15-minute drive away from school. Previously, it was an hour and a half. We've just moved in here about 2 weeks ago. I'm hoping to, in my spare time, be able to get a lot more involved in some of the different clubs and societies and things like that, because a lot of that's all just driven by the interest and the enthusiasm of the parents and teachers who are around. But yeah, she was saying, Dad, can we get a snake club going? And I said, well, fair enough, girls are interested in, and we can get something going. Yeah, maybe let's talk to the teachers and see where it goes.
That's it's very cool. It's such a, I think the experience in Africa and other places around the world is a little different maybe than what I was exposed to growing up, because like I said, boarding school was a threat. Like it was not common for kids, my age, or just when I was growing up. I still don't think it is in the US. Boarding schools, like there's a few. There might be a couple in the state, and maybe the families with a lot of money would send their kids to boarding school or something for some reason. But the vast majority of Americans just can't get their head around it. So I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. Have you had that conversation with clients as well from the States?
Very often, exactly. And they're like, what? Like you said, you sent your kid at 5.5 to go to like 4 nights a week. Your child's away. Like, are you crazy? It's like, well, actually, and the thing is for me that really kind of, when I look at my wife who went through that system, so I only started when I was 13, I was a little bit older and all that lot. When she was much younger, and to this day, some of her very closest friends are all from that time, from when they're at boarding school, and they all started at 6 years old together. And these are people, she won't see them for a couple of years or months on end, and they just pick up where they left off. And she's got friends from high school, and then she's got people from university, but her really closest buddies are all from that time. And when I look at that, I'm like, wow, something happened then that created a really strong bond between you guys. And not just a superficial bond, but a very, very strong bond. And I look at my daughter Tassia and Hugo and what they've gone through. Yeah, I'm a very strong convert. It just, and they might grow up a little bit quicker and all that lot, but we feel lucky that it's worked for both of them. Yeah, as I said, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting difference. So correct me, so you're, all of this conversation we're having is about your time. You're in Zimbabwe now.
Yes, I'm in Zimbabwe now.
Because I heard you say came back. Okay, all right. And is there any other country in Africa you'd rather live?
Actually, no. And again, I spent, so I've been at university. I did my undergraduate degree in Cape Town, South Africa, and we lived there for a few years when I was much younger. I lived and worked in Kenya for 5 years. I've been fortunate to have traveled to, I think it's about 22 different countries in Africa, and I guide safaris into 18 of those. And when I go to all of those places and I look at the ups and the downs and the pros and the cons, and I come back to Zimbabwe and I just see what we've got here, there's no doubt in my mind that I would want to be anywhere else. We have an incredibly beautiful country. We have so many good things going for this place. And I think particularly at this time in my life with our children, schooling for them is absolutely critical. And the quality of the schools that we have, Jason, here is unbelievable. I tell you, if you had to come out to Zim and go and visit some of these schools, you would just be blown away and just see how happy and how thriving these kids are. I look at junior school, my son's doing horse riding, Tassio's playing golf, all this crazy stuff. And it's like, here's a 10-year-old saying, well, Dad, can I sign up for golf this term? It's like, well, that's cool, Tass, go for it. And there's my 10-year-old son saying, yeah, I'm going horse riding. And then they've got mountain biking clubs, and they've got fishing clubs, and they've got all this kind of stuff going on. And that's just in addition to your normal tennis, hockey, football, netball, swimming, all the kind of boiling kind of stuff. They've got all this other really exciting stuff.
I think
that's all we have. Yeah.
I think that folks listening to this that aren't familiar with Zimbabwe, I have not been to Zimbabwe. I've been to Zambia. I've been to a few countries in Africa, not to Zimbabwe. So I probably have
some unique
something. I know because I know I have some preconceived ideas that are completely just based on the conversation so far. I realize, wow, that's not what I would have expected, about a conversation about Zimbabwe. And I suspect there's a lot of folks overseas that have never been as well that probably have preconceived ideas about Zimbabwe. And we have, it's interesting. We remember negative things from the past, negative news, negative just things that have happened. And it's almost like think they were yesterday. I spend a lot of time in Colombia right now. It's kind of the same thing. When I was growing up, Colombia there was a lot of really difficult things happening in the country. And when I decided to come here a couple of years ago, my family is like, you can't go there. That's dangerous. It was all based on ideas that they, news stories that they'd seen in the past, because the news is really good at saying what's bad. But then when things change and improve, they don't tend to come back and do the, where are they now type of thing and show the improvements and the changes and stuff. So I'd love for you to touch on that.
Yeah, yeah. And Jason, again, when it comes to that, I just look at also from a guiding point of view, what I do, the experience I'm able to offer my guests and the wild wildernesses that we have and the big spaces and the freedom that I have as a guide to take people on foot into these places. Other guides elsewhere in Africa only dream about the stuff that we can do here. And so from that point of view as well, the experience that we can offer, the very close to nature experience that we can offer here, and I'm talking specifically about walking. That's what makes me tick. I'm a professional walking guide. There's nothing I get more excited about than getting out on foot, finding a fresh set of lion tracks early in the morning and saying to my guests, right, guys, grab your backpack. Let's throw a couple of apples in. Let's put a couple of bottles of water in. We're going to track these things until we find them. It might take us an hour. It might take us 4 hours. Who knows? But this is where we are for, or getting out and seeing a huge big elephant bull and of walking up to a big tree and then finding a safe way to get it and go and just sit down next to him in a little gully or something like that. But time on foot in these big wild areas with elephant, buffalo, rhino, lion, leopard, that's what makes me tick. And we have got a guiding qualification process in Zimbabwe. I won't talk too much about it because it'll take up the full 45 minutes, but we've got one of the most rigorous guiding qualification processes anywhere in Africa, possibly the world. And it really allows, or should I say, it weeds a lot of people out to look at the very glamorous side of guiding, driving a four-wheel drive vehicle around, sipping gin and tonics, watching the sunset, rubbing shoulders with some of the most wonderful and interesting people in the world. There's a lot more that comes to that, and the responsibility of walking out in the bush with people's lives in your hands. You're the one making the call. It's a huge responsibility, and your knowledge and understanding of wildlife and everything is really on a whole different level to anywhere else. Because when you're driving around pointing out animals from a car and getting your book out and explaining the name of the bird and the tree and this and that from a vehicle, you're a spectator to the whole thing. Once you're out on foot and you've got people's lives in your hands and you're out in these wilderness areas, there's a big responsibility, but that for me is what gets me excited. That's what I love to do. And Zimbabwe allows that in spades, and an experience
I wanted to ask, you said what we can do here. We can get out and walk around. We can. The things you can do there that you can't maybe do other places, presumptively. Is that just because the resource allows it so well, or is that because of regulations and rules? I mean, why can you do all these walking safaris in Zimbabwe, but maybe you can't do the same type of thing in other countries?
Yes. Yeah. So in other countries, South Africa, you can go on walking safaris. Zambia is a country that's very well kind of, should we say, marketed as a walking safari destination. It's not that you can't walk in those countries, but typically the kinds of walks that we're able to do is you're able to get in very close and personal with these animals. You've got a level of training that is far superior to anywhere else. And in a lot of those places, Kenya, Tanzania, for example, you're out and you've got a game scout who's got a 303 rifle or an automatic AK-47 or something like that. None of those people, in many cases, have really been trained per se to really walk you up and get close to a herd of elephants or track a pride of lions. You're going to go out for a walk and you're going to see the animals over there. You're going to look at them in your binoculars and you're going to do everything you can to avoid them and keep your distance from them. Whereas we're like, no, we want to get you in as close as we can, as safely as possible, though. And so it's just a much more intimate personal experience where the guide is the person typically who's carrying the weapon from that point of view. So we have this whole guide training process, but you need to have a certain weapon of a minimum caliber and all this kind of stuff. But basically, as the guide, you're the one who's actually calling the shots when it comes to the speed of the walk, the duration, how close you're going to get, all that kind of stuff. You want a guide who's deferring to someone else, who's just a national park, a government trained ranger, he's walking in front, and you. It's difficult to kind of explain it, but when you're the one making that call, you're not relying on someone else and what their experience is. It's just a very different experience, and it's difficult for me to really try and explain it because at the end of the day, someone's walking safari is a walking safari. Yes, walking out in the bush is the same from one country to another, but certainly the kinds of things that you can do and the closeness of the experience that you can have. In many places, you get out your car and you see a fresh set of lion tracks and your game scout's like, right, we're going to go in the opposite direction because there's lions here. It's too dangerous. We're like, no, there's fresh lion tracks. We need to get onto these things as quickly as we can.
I get it. I get what you're saying, but I also have the privilege of being able to sit here and see the look on your face as you're describing this. I hope that our listeners are able to kind of sense what you're saying as well. I think it's pretty cool. And I suspect there's also people out there that are listening to this like, oh man, Aunt just kind of scared me. They're like, no, there's lions here. We're going this way. So how do you, and some people are just not up for that. I get that.
Absolutely.
So I'm not suggesting you try and talk somebody into doing it that doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you get people that are apprehensive that are just kind of like, are you sure? So how does that work dealing with the clients?
Yeah, I suppose the main thing, Jason, is I've been in the saddle for 25 years now. Most of our guests are all word of mouth referrals. And so you're not booking your trip through a travel agent and a third party. When you're booking the trip, it's a referral that an email or a WhatsApp message comes through to me. And the first thing I do is get on the phone and I say, right, this is who I am. This is what I do. These are the places that I go to. This is the experience I like to give my guests. And people often say, well, I don't feel comfortable being out of the vehicle and doing certain things. And I say, well, if you don't feel comfortable, I'm not here trying to show off or be a cowboy or get you as close to a lion or an elephant or a buffalo, whatever the case is. It's your holiday at the end of the day, but I'm just letting you know that I can give you a level of experience that you're not going to find easily in many other places. And also for me, it's quite a difficult one to explain, but an old Africa experience. Giving people that feeling and certainly for me is being in a canvas tent for me is just so important. And it's been so interesting over the years just seeing how the safari industry's evolved, where you've now got these uber luxury, very, very expensive camps. And the camps are beautiful and they've got cappuccino machines whizzing around every corner and infinity swimming pools and all that kind of stuff. But the essence of the safari, I think, is largely being lost. And I think you can have a 5 or a 5-star experience from a 2-star infrastructure. You just get a couple of things right. A really good quality wine, a good coffee, a wholesome, freshly prepared meal, a comfortable bed, a hot shower, a loo that's perfectly clean and functional. And for me, and more so, is the luxury of being in a vast area and feeling as if you're the only people there, is exclusivity and privacy and freedom. We can get out and we can walk, we can game drive, we can do a night drive, we can get a fishing rod out and throw a fly out and catch a tiger fish. We can do all those kinds of things, but that feeling of anything is possible and being able to not like, well, we can't do this and we can't do that and we can't do the other. No, we can and want to be able to do all those things as if we were almost doing this a century ago when you didn't have all these rules and regulations and things that have had to come in as the industry has just become such a big industry.
Right. That reminds me of, I'm not sure what it reminds me of. There's quite a few things rolling around in my head. You kind of, I think it was the talk of luxury. I spoke with someone here recently that was talking about luxury does not necessarily mean, linen, super fancy, everything. It's value. It's really about the value that it provides. And yeah, maybe it's expensive and maybe you're sleeping in a canvas tent and you're paying twice as what you would pay for a hotel in town, but it can still be luxury because it's the value that it brings, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's the overall experience at the end of the day. And so I'm finding myself more and more going to, I won't say the word is basic, but I'm saying simpler camps that are more remote. So the cost of getting in and out of those places is expensive. You haven't just got seat and plane rates. You haven't got a shuttle bus going back and forth. If you want to get into these places, the only way you're going to get to these wilderness areas is a private charter. You're in a small camp. It's very remote. It only operates for a short period of time as far as the season goes. There's a premium that you have to pay for that. And so at the end of the day, it's the experience, as you say. It's not about the Wi-Fi speed and the thread count and how many different kinds of champagne they've got and the bronze sculptures around the mudge and all that lot.
Well, and you can imagine, if you're a tour operator and you decide, okay, I want to start a safari camp and I want it to have all the best linens and the infinity pool and the this and the that and this and the that. When they decide where to place that, what criteria are they going to use to decide where to place that? They're going to place it somewhere that's logistically feasible, that has good roads into it. They're not thinking, well, what's the most remote place where like the clients will be closest to the animals and have the most authentic experience, maybe interaction with local tribespeople, because that's just cost prohibitive. So you can imagine, I mean, I've been fortunate to visit quite a few places, and one of my fondest memories was the most remote in Namibia, where I don't think there'd ever been a camp in this particular spot. They set up the camp for us, and it was definitely the canvas tents, the cots, the sleeping bag, good coffee in the morning, and a guy kind of like the gentleman we were speaking about earlier, that, the long flowing red hair, but he was missing an arm. So he was like and I remember when we met him at the airstrip.
Chris Buckus, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it
was taken. He's an absolute legend.
Yeah. And when we came in on the flight in to this little airstrip, I don't even know if it was an airstrip. I think it was just a flat spot in the sand. And we landed, and this guy pulls up in the vehicle and he gets out. And I looked at him and I looked at the other folks that were on this trip. We were all tour operators. It was a fam trip. I said, I'll bet you anything he tells us it's a crocodile. It's got to be a crocodile. Because anything less than crocodile is going to be really disappointing. So we met him and nobody said anything. And then at dinner the first night, I was like, okay, tell me about the crocodile. And, he told the story. And I recall it had something to do with his dog or crocodile. I don't remember all the details. But oh my gosh, his energy was just like the absolute, he brought that character that it sounded like a lot like the guy you were talking about.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so much so, and that's why I just believe it's the individuals. You can go and stay in a super fancy Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons, whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, a lot of those places, because they're such big chains and don't get me wrong, they're fantastic experiences for certain people. But at the same time, when you're the owner of your business and your next booking is going to come from a referral from those guests having had a good time or whatever, or that's what you do and get excited about. It's very different to a big business that's just got a whole bunch of employees and has to have these standard operating protocols. Your hair has to be cut this high and your fingernails have to be cut that short and you have to conform to all these things. You lose those charismatic, interesting people a lot of the time.
They probably wouldn't even hire. They probably wouldn't even hire Chris. They look at him like, no, it doesn't fit the mold. And he was the best person to hang out in the bush with. And we had, in my mind, still to this day, I feel like we had an adventure that nobody else has ever had. They maybe do the same adventure every week. I don't know, but we felt like we were the first ones there, the last ones there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah. And Jason, as you say, you feel as if that was the most incredible experience that no one else has ever experienced. That feeling is, there we go. That is exactly it. And so that, again, for us has been this whole thing as well as we provide a service. So what we call ourselves private guided safaris is exactly that. We meet our guests. Well, so first of all, we're involved in the whole planning of the itinerary, which is meticulous. There's a lot of phone calls and back and forth and all that lot. And then basically, I'm going to meet those people literally from when they set foot in Africa, and will be with them to all the different lodges and camps that we go to. I will be accompanying them from one place to another. So you've got that continuity of information. You've got someone always looking out for the group. I'm always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's going to be happening, making sure we're also getting the absolute maximum experience out of a certain place by saying to the manager, hey, please can we have a bush dinner under this tree on the second night? And on our first morning, can we have a breakfast out in the bush at this place? And going and speaking to the local fishing guide in the camp, who's the top fishing guide, and say, right, tomorrow afternoon, we're on the boat fishing and we're going to that honey hole of yours that you don't normally take people to because I know it. That kind of stuff. And so it's just rounding that whole experience and just having that guaranteed level of service delivery and humor and camaraderie and all of that.
So let me ask you this, because there's a lot of different business models, around tourism, inbound operators, outbound operators, DMCs. And what I hear you saying is you've, mostly repeats, referrals. You're dealing with, them from the beginning when they first inquire with you to set up something.
Yeah.
As opposed to the model where maybe your clients are outbound tour operators from the US and they're just sending you clients and they send you an electronic manifest and say, here's the flight they're coming in on, here's what time you need to pick them up. And you just kind of get whatever notes they shared. Do you feel like it's easier? I mean, there's obviously a lot more work when you're doing direct with direct with your clients ahead of time.
Yeah.
But in the long run, do you feel like it's easier, more rewarding for you to work directly with them? Because then when they show up, they already have the trust, right? You already got some sort of connection. They show up just totally different, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are basically a DMC as well for other private guides into the Southern African region and stuff like that as well. But as far as things go, is that I also will guide trips for other travel agencies from time to time. And so I do a mix of both. But for most of our direct bookings, I just think it's really important that we're able to have all those conversations. In some of the camps that we go to, they're very remote. I'm just making sure that there's nothing's being missed. This is the experience and dietary stuff, all those small details that can make a really big difference to the overall trip. And a lot of that often gets missed when the guest goes to their travel agent to the US. The travel agent in the US gets hold of a DMC somewhere in Africa, and that person then says, "Hey, Ant, we've heard about you through so and so. Can you please guide these guests of ours? Is your calendar free over these dates?" And if I look at my calendar and I'm free, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's my daily guiding fee. Cool. But it is quite difficult. There is that kind of disconnect that I haven't been in touch with those guests to just make sure that just nothing's been left to chance. And that's where we really do like to just have that direct communication, particularly.
And I know you're going to continue here in just a second. And I also recognize that your partners overseas, the outbound tour operators or the travel agents that do send clients to you, are also important for your business. And I know if they're listening to this right now, you don't want them to say, well, geez, Ann, it sounds like you don't want to work with us and you would rather just do direct booking. And I know that's not the case. So that's why I wanted to, because I think some tour operators, some other tour operators and agents, hopefully you're listening to this episode right now. So what is the piece of advice that you might give to a travel agent that is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and has a client come in, wants to go to Africa? They've heard of you. They're going to reach out to you. What's the best advice that you can give them to help them set up their clients to and themselves to have a great review at the end of the day?
Yeah. So what I think would be important is before the trip, kind of when they get hold of me and say, "And we'd like you to look after this family," whatever the case is that I would like to be able to, they must have the trust in me that I can contact their guests and say, "Hey guys, so-and-so's been in touch with me. They would like me to guide you. I'm absolutely delighted. I'm so looking forward to our trip together. It's a really great itinerary. These are the places we're going to. And hey, I just want to introduce myself. What makes you tick? Where do you normally go on holiday with your family? What wines do you normally drink? Are you a single malt Scotch drinker, or do you prefer a bourbon? Do we need to bring a couple of cigars along on the trip? What else and what can I do to make this trip for you not just a great holiday, but an incredible experience of a lifetime?" And if I've got that communication directly with that person, it just means when they get out of the plane and I shake their hand, I'm like, "Hey, it's awesome to see you." It's not a stranger that I'm kind of looking at like a passport name and a this and a that. If I've been given their details to really kind of get to know them before they come, that really does that.
Is that difficult with a lot of outbound tour operators and travel agents? I've worked in the business long enough to know sometimes they're like, "Nope, I don't want you to have any direct contact with the client," which is kind of ironic because I don't want you to talk to the client because as soon as I get off the plane, they're going to spare weeks. So it's like, if you're going to poach them somehow, or if you're going to put ideas in their head they should book directly or whatever, whatever. Yeah. What do you think the fear is that these travel agents or tour operators might have that causes them to be resistant to let you communicate directly with the clients?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a resistance per se, but I just look at so many of the trips that I've done, just trying to get those little details out of them. It's just you'll send a form saying, please, I need these following things, and you chase up and you chase up and you chase up, and I suppose it's more actual my back to say, actually, I would like to speak to these people directly. I just think I'm going to be spending time with them. I'd like to just introduce myself, and so I don't think there's a reluctance per se. It's possibly more something just now that we're having this conversation, you've actually asked me that question, that would just be something I think would really help a lot. And there's also, I suppose, the that whole trust side of things is that, yeah, if you're going to go and take someone's guess, well, you're never going to, word gets around very, very quickly, very, very quickly. And so, yeah, I look at the things I might have done 20 years ago when I was young and kind of green behind the ears and didn't really know how the industry worked. Very different to how one kind of conducts your business now with a full understanding of all the people and the ownership and the relationships and all that side of things.
It's interesting because who knows? Because there's so many different reasons a travel agent might think, yeah, you're too busy to talk to them. I'll take care of it. I'll do all this. I'll handle it because I know you're busy and I don't want to bother you. And you're giving us commission, so I don't think you should have to do this. But that's our job to gather all this initial information. So they may be making assumptions about what you want to do. And I think you're right. I think if you just say, look, this is yeah, I'd love to work with your clients, and this is my process. And here's a link to my Zoom room or whatever. And they do a quick CEO call. And I'll send you a copy of the recording. We'll record the call. We'll send it to you in case your planners want to have some idea what was said and what was promised if they want. But yeah, because and as a client, or maybe the agent thinks that the client's too busy. The client, maybe they've got this story in their head that the client hired them so that they wouldn't have to talk to somebody in Africa.
Yes.
But that's just the story in their head,
Yeah. And I just think that the level of service that we give is just, it really is, it is, yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but small little things that can make such a big difference. And again, one of the most enjoyable parts of what I do, and I think I'm lucky to have one of the most privileged occupations in the world. You think, wow, you're taking people out on safari who in many cases have saved up for years and years. It's their once in a lifetime holiday to Africa. And that's the funny thing. People are like, we've wanted to come here our whole lives, and this is a once in a lifetime thing, expecting they're never going to come back. And 8 times out of 10, maybe 7 or 8 times out of 10, before that safari's even finished, they're like, wow, and where are we going to next year? This holiday has just been so incredible. We had no idea it was going to be so enjoyable. Where else can we go? And that's, yeah. A hugely, yeah.
It's very, very cool. It's and Africa is such a diverse place. I mean, but we don't, like, you live in the US, you can look at a map and see that Africa's big, but really, if you're not looking at a map, Africa feels very small just because you don't know much about it. If you take everything you know about Africa and compile it in your head, it just takes up a very small space. You think elephants, cheetahs, lions, civil unrest, realistically, right? You mix all that stuff in there, and malaria and snakes or whatever, and those whatever things, some good and some negative, and you condense it all into your story of Africa. It's a very, very small little package. So you can probably say, well, I want to go there once in my life. And somehow you kind of think that is feasible because your view of Africa is so small that it's like, that makes sense. But then once you go there and you're like, holy cow, we've just barely scratched the surface, especially if they're spending time with you, that guides in 18 different countries. By the end of 2 weeks, they're probably going home with all kinds of ideas of places and things they want to see. So that makes sense. I can see that.
No, absolutely. No, completely. You say Namibia, you look at just how very different every country and experience is. And just some of these amazing places also opening up as well. You've got organizations like African Parks who are really moving the needle and taking over the management of parks that were literally defunct, broken. On paper, they were parks, but they were nothing else. And they're turning these places around. How crazy is this? Within the last couple of weeks, I don't know if you know this at all, but in South Sudan, you've got Boma and Badingilo National Parks. You've never even heard of these two places. Within the last couple of weeks, African Parks have just put out a press statement to say the largest migration of large mammals on the face of this planet is actually in between these two national parks and going into Gambela National Park in Ethiopia. You're looking at 6 million large mammals. That's more than double the size of the Great Migration, the Serengeti. In 2024, the middle of 2024, is the world being told, actually, guys, the biggest mammal migration of, and these aren't little things. These are tiang, these are mangala, antelope, what's the other one? White-eared cob. There's about 5 million white-eared cob. This is an animal that's bigger than a white-tailed deer. And the world didn't even know about this.
It's not that this migration just appeared overnight. It's been there for a while. So we're talking about, because the South Sudan gets a lot of press. I've heard a lot about the South Sudan, not about migrations in the South. If you want to, maybe migration, but not like animal migration like that.
Yeah. So just saying, there's these places. You've got Zakuma National Park in Chad. It is the single most incredible wildlife spectacle that you could ever experience. And in 25 years of guiding, I regularly go there. Every time I come back from it, I'm like, how can this place exist? How can there be such an incredible abundance and diversity of wildlife and bird life that people who have been on safari 20 times to Southern Africa and East Africa, nothing can prepare them for what they'll see when they go there. They come away from there their whole mind shift has just been blown out of the water.
A mind shift is incredible. And this all reminds me of something I just saw on your website. I still have it saved here on the tab on my computer. It says a good guide will take you where you want to go. A great guide will take you where you need to go. And that's what I just heard in your voice was like, okay, you might think, maybe you want to go to Serengeti. I get that. Some people want to do that. But there's these other places you're talking about that I suspect are just going to be a lot more profound and potentially life-changing, not just because of the animals. The animals obviously are very, very important, but there's a lot more than just animals in Africa.
So much so. And the good news stories that are coming out of some of these places is just phenomenal. Just some incredible stuff. And you just look at, just Zakuma as an example, and there are a whole range of them, but that's exactly it. And I just find 25 years on, yes, it's great going to the Serengeti and the Mara and those places, but for me, it's not so much just about the animals. It's about these incredible landscapes that are being turned around, the people in them, and ultimately luxury in terms of exclusivity, feeling as if you're the only people in that park or in that area or whatever the case is.
When I was guiding, I was a fly fishing guide. I've led a lot of trips, and I'm a hot air balloon pilot. So I had a hot air balloon ride business for a while. And I just always felt, maybe selfishly, but I just always felt if I was having fun, if I was doing what I thought was cool, then the clients would have fun as well, within reason. I mean, it's, if somebody doesn't want to fly in a balloon, they're not going to have fun in a balloon just because I'm having fun in a balloon. But it was just always like, if I was doing what I thought was really going to be interesting for me, trying to connect, I'm also pretty good at connecting with people, but if I could listen to what they want to do and then figure out how to do that in a way that would be fun for me, it would just be so much more fun. And I'm a firm believer in that. And so that's like, when people book a guide, just really, anybody listening to this, I would just say, be really careful about going to the guide saying, this is what we want, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And especially if it's a place you've never been, because you saw pictures on Instagram. I want to go to Pisa. I want to go to, Naples. I want to go to wherever these places are. And, really just try and start the conversation with an open mind, which really part of that challenge is because we have so many ways to research things now. So when back in the day, if you wanted to go to Italy, I don't know, I'm using Italy as an example, but if you wanted to go to Italy, you might find a friend who's been, or you might find a trusted travel agent, travel advisor of some sort, or maybe you just saw somebody on TV. I think it was Perillo Tours or whatever I used to see commercials for. And you just decide, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I want to go to Italy, and you'd go to wherever they would suggest you go. But now with Instagram and all these different resources, you can over research it way too much. And I'm sure you have clients all the time that come to you. And it's the same thing with doctors. Doctors deal with the same thing. Lawyers deal with the same thing. Real estate agents, we all have the same issues.
Everyone's an expert. Yeah. Everybody's an expert. And from what they've learned, really, Instagram or Google.
Yeah. And if you tell them, no, you don't want to go there, then there's that sense of, but yes, I do. And all of a sudden I don't trust you because you must not want to take me there because you can't make as much money on that particular outing or because of whatever reasons. So what do you say to people that are just now starting to think about going to Africa? Should they do a bunch of research first? How should they get this started?
I think it's always good to do that. But again, what I always kind of go back to, and when I set up some of my first calls, when we have a referral, someone wants to come and do a trip with us, is I'll sit down with them and I'll figure out, say, right, where do you normally go on holiday, and how long, and what experience are you after, and have you got any ideas of where and when you want to go, and just kind of hear them out and all that lot. And then I'll be able to go and say, okay, if you want to travel that time of year, it makes sense that we either look at this region or that region or the other. But I'll basically then say to them, I've been in this game for 25 years, and I pretty much am accompanying every group of guests that I go with. I'm not going to want to take them to somewhere where I am not 100% sure that they're going to have a great time there. But at the same time, I'm not hitching my horse to any particular wagon, or my wagon to any particular horse, however it goes. But we find we want to put together a trip for a specific group, and all of our trips are tailored, and we're not going to a particular lodger camp because you get a higher commission or this or that. And another thing I think which sets us apart from a lot of other people as well is in terms of our costings, we actually put together a costing breakdown, which is totally open. It's an Excel spreadsheet pretty much that shows every single element of the trip, from Ant gets in a taxi to go to Harare International Airport, return, and he's got 2 of those, and those are $40 each. Ant's flight from here to Nairobi is X. Ant gets to the hotel and he's in a guide room, it's Y. Guests arrive and they have a meet and greet. Every single line item is detailed right the way, and they can go to all of those lodges and camps that we sell and say, you are welcome to get online and go and check the prices of those places. We're not going to charge you a cent more than what the recommended retail price is. And if there's a special deal or something, whatever, we're going to pass it on to you. And so that, I think, also helps us. We're not putting together a package trip and saying, right, the package is costing you this. And because you've got a blow-by-blow account and people can see, and they can say, well, all the other camps in itinerary are all $900 a night, but this camp is like $2,000. Why is that so much? And is it necessary? Then you can sit down and say, right, this is how that itinerary works, and the reason why we're going there is because of X, Y, and Z. And if you don't like that, here are the other options. There's options A, B, C, and D, and they can then look, and we'll give them the price of all those. So that really, I think, helps a lot.
And that's different. That's different. That's not something that you see a lot in this business, and I respect that. And partially why you don't see it a lot is not that other operators are trying to pull the wool over your eyes necessarily, but it actually creates more back and forth potentially, because there is that conversation. If you're doing it a much higher level of back and forth, because if someone sees one line item, well, why are we doing this? Why did you charge me? It could be $20. Why was this $20? And now you've got the back and forth of explaining it, where if you just took the same prices and just said, here's the total, it'd be easier for you. It doesn't actually change anything. It's still the same price. So I respect that you do that. That's
it's an interesting thing. And I suppose it's more just also when people, because the safari is such an expensive trip comparatively, it really isn't a cheap holiday when you look at your air charters. And also it also is good to know, in some cases, you might be staying in quite high-end place. In other places, you're staying in a simple camp. And as we were talking about earlier on, just the cost of operating in such remote areas is so high. So you're saying, whilst the other lovely lodge that we're going to be finishing the trip off is a similar kind of price, the price is because we're the only people here, and we're not going to see another living soul in the 4 days that we're here, and that kind of a thing.
It does.
So
It gives you an opportunity to explain things, and that even probably even more reinforces once they get there and they've already got that trust, and you're like, hey, there's lions here, let's go.
yes, yeah. And then, I'm just sort of think when people first, when they first say, well, how much is a safari going to cost? And there's a multi-generational family. There's kind of 12 people, whatever the case is. And you're like, okay, it's suddenly people can be like, whoa, okay, we didn't realize. And then you can then say, okay, well, this is how we can tailor it. This is the reasons why, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's cool. It's more work, but I can see why you've got so many repeats and referrals. That's it's pretty good. Yeah, we spoke about a lot of things, and there's a lot of things we didn't even touch on. It's kind of like your life and your story in this business is kind of like Africa, big and full and diverse and many different things. And I want to make sure to give you the opportunity. Is there anything I should have asked, anything that I forgot to ask, or just anything in particular that you want to make sure our listeners know about you, Africa, life in general?
Yeah.
Anything at all you want to share before we wrap up?
Yeah. If I can, just a couple of things. I suppose, again, just our business as far as having a private guide, there is obviously an expense that comes with that additional service. But I can tell you, having an escorting private guide travel with the group, particularly if you're doing several different properties, if you're doing a 12 or 14 night itinerary where you're staying at 3 or 4 different properties, the value that any private guide brings to the table is it's huge. At the same time, I would say don't always go for the most luxury properties per se. You can have a 5-star experience from a 2-star camp, as I kind of see it. And I think going back to the whole guide side of things, that's the person who's creating the magic for you. You're with them on all the activities. You don't just get back to the lodge and you get handed over to the management, and then you go and sit down and make small talk with the waiter and all that lot. Your guide is there. He's keeping everything flowing and all that lot. And so I just believe that it's a really important service that it is really, I won't say undervalued or rated, but yeah, certainly something that just makes a great trip, an incredible trip. And at the same time, also, look for those wilder places. They still exist out there. There's some incredible places that, simple camps. That certainly, when you find the lions yourselves and you're the only vehicle watching those lions, or you're on your own 2 feet watching those lions, having tracked them, and you don't see another person that whole day, it's a very different experience to going to somewhere else where you're staying in a super fancy lodge, but 5 minutes out of the camp, you've been radioed in to come and see a particular sighting, and there's 20 other vehicles surrounding it. You very quickly realize, where would you rather spend your money? But it's difficult as a guide or tour operator to try and explain that until people have actually seen it and experienced it. And again, a lot of people will come on their first trip, and then afterwards they will then say, hey, actually, we would like to have a guide, because there's an inside knowledge and that level of service that is just so different.
Happy you brought this up, because I realize as I'm listening to you, I know what you're talking about because of my experiences, but I also recognize that, like you said, if you've never been to Africa, you've never been on safari, it's kind of hard to understand the difference. It's like when I had my balloon ride business, I had a smaller balloon, so I typically would take a couple charter flights. I would do, private charter flights. But most people that book a balloon ride have never been on a balloon ride. So if you go online and search for balloon rides, you're going to see the $100 per person balloon ride in a basket with 24 other people. And then you're going to see Jason's balloon ride over here, and it's $1,000 for 3 or 4 people. And it's like, well, that's crazy. Obviously, I want a balloon ride. I have no idea the difference. They don't understand the difference and rightfully so. How would they? Why would they understand? We're all familiar with hotels. We know that different hotels are different prices. You get different levels of service. We get restaurants. We understand, McDonald's is not the same as Ritz Chris Steakhouse or whatever. And the private guide or shared guide thing is interesting because, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my idea is, you can book through a tour operator. You can book a 14-day package, stay in at 3 or 4 different game camps that are all probably very good game camps. And you go there, and each morning it's like, okay, we're going to meet the guide at 7 o'clock, whatever, after breakfast, and you go out and you stand with your group of other guests that are staying at the lodge that night, and that changes every night. And you climb into a vehicle with them, and you've got your guide and your spotter up front, and you go out for the day, and it's cool. I'm not going to say it's not cool, especially if you've never been to Africa. But then the difference is you've got this 14-day trip, and you've got somebody like yourself, Ant, along for the entire ride. And you get to know the people, and you're able to, after a day or two, I mean, you've already customized it before they come, but that changes as you get through the course. You're like, oh, I know these people really like this type of thing, so we're going to go do this. And you don't have to worry about, well, what are the other 8 people in the vehicle, or, the other 8 vehicles from the camp, because I know I've guided group trips before where, as a fishing guide, I'd have my boat and my clients, and then we have 8 other boats that were going out that day, and we'd all coordinate what stretch of the river we're going to float today based on the overall operational, necessities. Maybe that's transfers, that's lunches. We're all going to stop at one place and do lunch, and you're tied to what everybody else wants to do. And the private guide is like every day you wake up and just go do whatever you want to do. It's a huge difference. So
it's a huge difference. Absolutely. And Jason, also just to say is that typically whoever plans the trip, whether it's the mum or the dad or whoever kind of plans the safari, the problem they also have is when they get out on safari and they haven't got a private guide, you've now got the whole family saying, okay, Dad, so what are we going to do tomorrow? And okay, Dad, well, what are we doing here? And okay, Dad or Mum or whoever it is, what is this? Whereas when I count through some, as I meet them and say, guys, I'm in charge of absolutely everything. Any has got any question, Dad, you've planned the trip and you've paid for it. You're on holiday as well now. Everyone comes to me. You're on holiday now, and this is what's going to happen, guys. Make sure you all have a pee, because we're going to be in the truck for 20 minutes until we get to the hotel. Then when we get to the hotel, we're going to do A, B, C, D, and E, etc., etc. And I'm doing all that lot. So guys are like, "Whoa, this is awesome!" I'm actually, because so often they find that everyone's nagging them and asking this, ask that, and they haven't got the answers to those questions. They don't know how it's going to take.
Because the guy they were just with today dropped him off out in front of the camp and disappeared, and you're not going to see him again till tomorrow at 9, and you have no way of even guessing when on the next day. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's why I'm at dinner saying, okay, guys, tomorrow morning, always sitting around the dinner table, and the next thing we hear lions roaring out of camp. Guys, put your lights folks on right now. We're going. So many other guests, and the guys has gone back to his room, and the car's parked somewhere else. So I'm always ready to provide those little things that you just end up so often missing out on.
And you just won't know until you get there if you do it, So just take our word for it. And I'm going to have a link to your website. It's a good branding website. It's a lot of beautiful photos. And it's a good way to connect with you. So I'd encourage anybody listening to this that's ever thought, whether you're a travel agent, tour operator, we already discussed that, but obviously anybody thinking about going to Africa, I would suggest they take a look at your website, but more importantly, reach out and connect with you, because I think that's where the magic happens, is having that conversation, and you can kind of help guide them through not necessarily what they want to do, but what they need to do.
Yeah. Absolutely, Jason, and that's it. And so often we have this like, our friends have just been to wherever, and we have to go there. And I'm like, whoa, I would never ever go there. No, you definitely don't want to go there. They might have had a good time there, but quite honestly, there are 1,000 places they would have a much better time. And they know where you.
Yeah. This thought just came up that used to drive me crazy, because I discussed the differences between different types of balloon rides. And I'd go out with my clients, and we'd fly in a totally different area than everybody else. And it was a totally different experience. And I was always excited to read the reviews. I always had amazing reviews. And then I'd go look at the reviews for some of the other balloon ride businesses that I knew were just a totally different experience. And they all had good reviews too. And I'm like, how can this be possible that my clients are writing reviews that are very similar to the client that stood in a basket with 20 people? And it's because they have no frame of reference. If you've never been in a balloon, it's going to be cool. I promise you. Even if you're with 20 people, it's going to feel like a cool experience. You've never done it before, and you're going to go back to your friends, and you're going to say, oh, we went on a balloon ride when we were in Arizona, and here's the company we went with. You need to go with them. But they don't have that frame of reference. So I think it's kind of the same thing that you're discussing, is just be open. If you don't understand why something's a little bit more expensive, like a balloon ride or a private guided safari, call and have a conversation. At least ask.
Yeah.
Because when people call me and say, why are you so much more expensive? Well, this is why. This is what it's going to be like. And this is how it's different. You want to propose to your girlfriend? Wouldn't it be great if it was you and your girlfriend and me in the basket 10,000 feet above the air holding champagne glasses and me taking pictures? Or would you rather do it with 20 other people? So anyway, and thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah. And it's just a great analogy because there's so much, it's like the difference between a Jeep, Willie's Jeep ride with, your guide and two or three people, or in a bus. You're going to be able to go places that you just can't go. And it's that. So anyway, the great conversation. I appreciate you. I look forward to collaborating with you on some projects in the future and hopefully visiting with you in Africa someday. Thanks, Ant. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.